Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode of the What Worked For You show. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about commercial real estate, but really, we're going to talk about a gentleman who's an entrepreneur who's not only created a lot of success in commercial real estate, but also in other business models as well. So, he's really more of a serial entrepreneur who's touched a number of different fields. In addition to $200 million worth of real estate deals done, he has scaled a cannabis operation to multiple states successfully. He has built a hospice-built company that is doing cool things. He has also formed a family social club, which he just told me about before we started, so that was very fascinating. We'll dive into that. He's raised a lot of money for philanthropy. He runs a company called OPES, Commercial Real Estate and Charitable Foundation. And because he hasn't done enough just yet, he's also an author. And I love the title of his book, Ego Driven Betting on Myself. That is super important. We'll dive into that. He's a man of family, he's a man of faith, and he's a man that really wants to make a difference and is making a difference in his world. Chuck Cuda, thank you for coming on today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Frank.
Wonderful. Let's dive in. You've led over 200 million in commercial real estate transactions. It's a lot of deals, a lot of money. When you look back, what was the key to effectively closing deals consistently to reach that kind of milestone?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that number's elevated since then, right? So since that
I'm
writing,
sure,
it's
yeah.
the key is obviously prospecting and building foundational relationships. So the most important thing in any business is the relationship side of it. And you don't just go out and prospect and get all of the business. You've got to plant the seeds. You've got to farm those deals. It takes a while to cultivate the meaningful relationships. And once you do, you could get the organic growth from that relationship and really maximize the value of that. So I would say the number one thing there is putting your client ahead of yourself and prioritizing them and making the relationship more valuable than the transaction.
So let's dive in on that. And I like the way you said that. For example, I'll have people call me every week and they're like, "Oh, we want to build a relationship with you." But you said meaningful relationships. What does that mean to you? And if you could go deeper on that, because a
Yeah,
lot of people, the word relationships almost become cliche.
that's right. It has. And for me, it's coming from a position of value. It's doing the little things, actually showing consideration and care for that person, and not just looking at it from a transactional perspective that if I have this relationship, I'm going to get something back in return. You need to be the one. The meaningful relationships is where they're both coming from positions of value. You form something that's more deeper rooted than just a transactional business relationship. It becomes a friendship. And that's really how we've tried to grow and scale all of our businesses.
Mm. So friendship does sneak in there. Because you mentioned
Mm.
friendship, and a lot of people are like, no, 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 it's just business. But you said friends, so it's okay to be
Yeah.
friends with these people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I would say that in the real estate side, the majority of our clients are our friends. Our attorneys are our friends. I see them as more than just a business relationship.
mm, mm. So a very common question. I'm curious to hear how you tackle it. And I've heard you hear this all the time, especially with people, not even necessarily new investors, but people that have been in the game for a while, and not just in real estate. Is this idea of how can I bring value to somebody if either A, I don't know them, like so I don't really know much about them, or B, well, wait a minute, they've accomplished X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and I'm just little old me. What can I like, right? And so we have these beliefs that we can't add value and we take ourselves out of the game before we've even tried to swing the bat. How do you help accomplish that? What's your
Yeah.
word to people that struggle with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you ask the meaningful questions. You try and find out a little bit more about them, what their hobbies are, try and find out something personal for them. And then when I say come from a position of value, it could be something as meaningful as sending a card with an article that maybe you cut out or you read something that could relate to their business, or it could relate to some of their hobbies or something that they enjoy doing. Taking them golfing, asking them how their kids are. That's why I use that word consideration, and I use that word in my book. I mean, I think coming from a position of consideration and being considerate and putting their needs ahead of yours really resonates, and that's how you really start to formulate those relationships.
Mm, mm. You mentioned the book briefly, so let's go there for a second.
Yeah, yeah,
The subhead, I love the subheading, betting on me or
yeah,
myself. It's a bet most people don't want to bet. It's scary.
yeah,
It's full vulnerability, right?
yeah,
Because if I bet on me and
yeah,
it doesn't work, uh-oh. What does that mean to you, betting on yourself? Walk us
yeah.
through
You
that.
Yeah, you can't be afraid of failure. So for me, my story starts with kind of a gambling addiction. So I was always the betting type, and I always wanted more. I always had a drive to do more, to be more. Uh, so when I look at betting on myself, it's taking those risks. It's taking the calculated risks. It's going all in on an opportunity, whether it be a real estate development, a business opportunity, and having the faith and confidence and belief in myself that I could learn whatever industry it is. I'm in a vast array of businesses. We've got regulated industries, federal payers with the hospice company and the Medicare portion. We've got Family Social Club, which is hospitality, the real estate side. But I'm always willing to bet on myself and take that risk, not not fearing failure. And I think the number one reason why people don't, go into business themselves or go into a sales position, where the sky could be the limit for them, is because they like the comfort and they like the stability, and they do fear that failure. When you put all of the onus on yourself to perform, some people don't have that ability, or they don't have that drive, and it's something that's never bothered me. The fear of I'm not afraid to fail, and to really truly succeed at high levels, you have to you have to be able to take the chances and put forth the risk.
So how does someone learn to not fear failure? That's like a golden question,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So in the book we talk about it. I mean, having the mindset. It all starts with mindset. Having the growth mindset versus the limited belief, thinking that you could constantly improve, perpetual improvement, get better every day, learn whatever industry that it is that you want to take, or game or sport. A lot of people don't play sports because they fear failure. Failure is part of life, and until you could embrace failure and utilize it as a tool for growth, then you're only going to have limited capabilities, limited potential. So it all starts with the mindset. It all starts with uh, getting over that fear, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "I'm going to take this chance, and here's what I'm going to do. If I do fail, here's what I'm going to do to improve that situation and to get better."
Mm, I love it. We're going to come back to this idea of taking chances because we could definitely go deeper there. But I've got that a little bit far down. We're going to come back to that. I wanted to ask you, Staling Elevation Cannabis went from 5 to 22 licenses across 3 states. I don't know that industry,
Yeah,
but it doesn't sound like a small feat. It sounds like a pretty big deal. Uh,
yeah.
how do what was it like scaling that company? Like, for because we've heard about this sort of thing, and we've even see where people will get on Instagram. Seems like Instagram always seems to be the place where everyone comes out with an ad that says, "Do this, it's easy," right? But I think any real entrepreneur knows nothing is ever really that easy. So, what was it like going into that business and then scaling it?
Yeah. So going into that business, we got into that business as a partnership just through the investment side. And somewhere along the first 3 years of operations, we didn't agree with the direction of the company. The operators were taking the company, and
Mm.
we decided to buy them out. So I had no cannabis operational experience at all. The board voted me in as CEO of the company, and it was something that I was embracing as a challenge, embracing the opportunity. I knew that I could do a better job than the previous operator. And once I proved to myself and the team that I was willing to put forth the effort to do that and to learn the industry and to grow, create efficiencies, and we started to flip the revenue from losing money monthly to making money, that's when I said, okay, this is something that we can now scale. So it was a very difficult, it's very difficult to grow in something that's so heavily regulated like the cannabis industry, and each state's regulations vary. So for us, putting together the right team, the right operations guys that are able to go from state to state, the right compliance team that's able to understand the regulatory compliance at a state to state level, the governmental affairs portion of our business. So getting the right people in the right seats was paramount for our success, our long term success and scalability, and then just growing from a position of strategic business principles and growth strategy as opposed to just going and planting flags and putting dots on a map. We wanted to grow through basic business principles, get the cultural alignment. With limited license states, you have to acquire and grow through asset acquisition. And I'll tell you this, Frank, the most challenging part of that growth was probably cultural alignment and company alignment. So as you acquire
Mm.
various assets across various states, just trying to get everybody rowing in the same direction, that the belief in the Elevate Cannabis Way, the belief in restructuring and the SOPs that we're putting in place, and the confidence in our team, just getting that buy-in and getting buy-in to our company and the culture that we operate under was probably the most challenging part of the entire growth and scaling of the company.
Well, I congratulate you for your success. And you said something in there that struck me early. You said, you didn't like the way it was being run after, I think it was 3 years, you said. And so you bought the company out. So now you own this company. And right after that, you're like, now we don't know anything about it. But what I love is you talked about, okay, a minute ago I didn't know anything about the company, but I'm going to be committed to learning about it and getting the company foundationally sound, foundational business principles. Like my background is real estate when I got in business, but I learned real estate before I learned business, which looking back, I'm like, that's totally backwards. We should have learned business and real estate's just a vehicle, which is like what you just said. It's like you understood business, cannabis was just the vehicle.
Yeah.
How did you effectively communicate these foundational principles to your team? Because the one thing I've learned in meeting many entrepreneurs now over the last several years is business really is business. We just have a lot of different
Mhm.
vehicles that sit on top of these foundational principles. How do you communicate those effectively so that you can go from thing to thing and duplicate that success?
Yeah. So for this particular endeavor, I had an all hands meeting with all of our staff members, and then I spent the first couple of weeks meeting with all of them individually and trying to understand their pain points, trying to see how we could become more efficient from an operational perspective, and letting them know that I'm spending time in every department. I was spending time with the cultivation team, with the harvest team. I was down there, harvesting the plants with the team, trying to learn as much. So leading by example and just showing them that no job's beneath me first and foremost. Even though I was the CEO of the company and one of the primary owners, I needed to be there at the facility to really understand what the pain points were so that I could assist them with building a strong foundation because I didn't think we were there yet. So then letting them know that I'm bought into that was paramount. And then the continuous communication. You've got to have the clear communication to your employees as to why you're doing certain things. And then the humility to where if it doesn't work, admitting that hey, it was your decision, and I'm not going to punish you because it didn't work. I tried this, and let's pivot. Let's see how we could restructure. So I think communication with your employees is the most important part of building that strong, solid foundation, a strong, solid culture. But then also number two, being able to have the humility to admit when something doesn't go right, you know.
Yeah, in our social media driven world, admitting a mistake is a little harder maybe than it used to be because then you get blasted and this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, it's just people make mistakes every day, right? Like,
Yep.
so, and you talked about culture in there, and then you were acquiring other assets, you're integrating culture, and culture is such a key piece. What do you find to be the greatest challenges with bringing cultures together, especially in a world that, if you get on the news, everybody seems so polarized, but then you bring it home, and it's like, it's not really that polarizing, right?
Mhm.
It's a little bit different reality than what we see on the news channels. But conflicts do exist, right? And so, what do you find to be most effective at bringing people together to create that melting pot of this? We all are unique, but it works.
Yeah, I think proven methods help. I understand and you communicate. Change even for the better is difficult, and I think that's the biggest issue with trying to get cultural buy-in when you make an acquisition or you hire a new employee is people are so used to doing things a certain way. Human beings are creatures of habit, and I tell them all the time, change even for the better is difficult. But if there wasn't change, then we would have walked to work or we would have ridden a horse and buggy to work. Change change is imperative to continued growth, right? So I think just that communication and just making sure that everyone understands that we're all on the same team and you're all working together for one common goal and sharing that goal and really getting them to understand how they could contribute, how they could help, and how they could benefit from it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love it. It's so important, and it's funny you mentioned horse and buggy because I like to drive my car in the mountains, and sometimes we'll see a horse and buggy, and we're like, I don't know, man. I hope that's for fun. So, but and it probably was, but nevertheless, um, you use the word proven in there. You've proven yourself as a founder. You've proven yourself as a CEO. What's the difference in those two roles, though, between founder and CEO? Is there a difference?
There is a founder could come up with an idea and the founder could be the visionary but can't execute on the vision or operate from leading the company to the vision, right? I could have an idea, I could come up with a great business plan strategy, but I may not be able to relate to the people that are actually going to lead us to the vision, right? There's no growth companies with one employee. You have to have scalability, you have
Mhm.
to have multiple employees, and from a CEO's perspective, you need to have the company buy in and want to follow you towards that vision. So I think it's important for the executive to understand that, or for the founder to understand that they could have a great idea, they could have built a company to 5 employees, but they're just not capable of leading a company to the growth to the direction that they want to grow, which may be 100 employees, maybe 5, 10 locations. Uh, they just may not have the business mind, the scalability, the personality, the relationships, just the leadership skills and qualities that are necessary from a CEO's perspective to grow and scale.
Mm, mm. Those are key things, and I appreciate you sharing that. Let's step back in time a little bit. I noticed you got into real estate as a leasing agent back during the 2008 crisis time frame. Was
Yeah.
that your first foray into business, or were you doing stuff before that, or?
No, I was doing it before it. So I did an internship when I was in college.
Okay.
My uncle had a firm, and I worked for him around 2004. So I got licensed in August of 2004, and I did brokerage for his company until about 2008. Yeah.
Okay. So what led you into, so you were getting into real estate. What attracted you to go deeper in this? Because I saw that OPES was founded in 2011. So what was going? Because I'm thinking, okay, 2011, right? That was, we were still in the middle of the whole real estate crisis, financial crisis, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I remember in 2011, I was still a younger investor back then, but the sky was still falling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So what was going through your
Yeah.
mind while the sky was falling? Said, let's start something.
Well, I didn't have a choice. So I said
Okay.
I was a gambler, right? So I actually went to jail in 2009 for refusing to testify in a grand jury investigation. There was a federal investigation in Kansas City, Missouri for online gambling, and a couple of my buddies and friends were tied up in that. And I got a subpoena to testify in August of 2009, and I refused to testify. And I was in contempt of court, and I went to jail for up to 18 months. I was only gone for 5, but when I got out in 2010, my uncle uh, my uncle didn't think I was a good fit for the company anymore. So
Mm,
he went a different direction, and it forced me to take that look in the mirror again and say, okay, you got yourself into this position. Now you've got to have the strength to move forward and still execute on your life streams, your life's vision, your life's plan. So, so I went and I was doing a lot of different things at the time, Frank. I didn't get right back into real estate. I just needed to get a job, at that point. So I was driving a vending route for a buddy of mine, Allied Refreshment Company. Joe Strata, my friend, and he hired me. Said you could work whatever hours you want, be flexible, so you could still try to get back into real estate. Uh, and then I was working nights at UPS to get health insurance benefits. And then I was working weekends bartending at Oceans of Fun. So I was trying to replace as much income as I could while still freeing up some time, from call it noon to 5 to get back into the real estate world. And I found a place to hang my license. The company's no longer around, but it was Victor Ross Commercial Real Estate. And that was in about June or July of 2010. And what happened was when I got back in, I was prospecting, doing the same things that I'd done, my whole career, but I was growing and scaling my business so quickly, because I had the drive, I had the desire, and I had that growth mindset, and I was bringing in, revenue to the company. And I went to the broker and I said, hey, I don't want to be bogged down by these 50-50 splits, with 50 going to the house and 50 coming to me. I want more, and I know that that was traditional, and that was kind of at the time, all they were willing to do. So I ended up branching off to Keller Williams, KW Commercial, before I started Opus. And I grew my team and grew my business under the KW Commercial umbrella uh,
mm,
prior to branching out on my own. So as I made that transition, it worked out. I say it worked out really well for me because I was already bringing a book of business. I was able to grow my team under an umbrella that didn't put me at a lot of risk, and I was able to scale that. But yeah, a lot of people were still stuck in the 2008, 2009, the crisis. There was a lot of REO property at the time. So what I did, I saw that as an opportunity, right? Some people failing as an opportunity for me, rather than going out and calling the stable investments. I formed a lot of relationships with bankers, with lenders who were taking back the bank owned REO. And then I would handle dispositions for those REO, properties. So that was extremely beneficial to growing my business at the time, especially because the bank didn't want they didn't want to own property, right? So they were taking the properties
mm.
back, but they wanted to get those off their books as quickly as possible. So I would give them a broker recommendation of value, uh, and then in 60 days, if it was still there, we would drop the price. 90 days, we would drop the price, and ultimately, we would move all of those properties within 180 days of listing. So it really helped me from that perspective. Was just looking at other avenues, looking at other ways to make money. Maybe people aren't leasing property at the time. How could I continue to grow my volume? Well, it forces you to look at other ways to make money.
So you're building the company at a time where there wasn't a lot of building going on. So first of all, and you're building a team. So you're convincing people, hey, let's do this at a time where it was hard to convince people to do it. So that's awesome. But then what I'm curious about is, okay, so as you were building and growing under the KW umbrella, and it always helps to have a reputable name behind you, right? That always helps. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but eventually the REO thing settled down, right? Like,
Yeah.
that settled down. So how did your business evolve and you keep the momentum going during that time of transition when the REOs are like, okay, the banks don't feel like they're real estate owners anymore for the most part. How,
Yeah.
how did that how did that work out?
Yeah, so that worked. It worked pretty well because then at that point I'd had about 3 years to build the solid foundational relationships, get back some of the clients that I'd had previously, uh, and start doing some investing on my own as well. So then I started to buy some vacant properties where now I was making the commission on the buy side. I would stabilize, lease the building, do a redevelopment, and then sell it. So I started to turn some capital that way for myself. But also, organically, my book of business, when you do right by people, and that's the number one thing when I say that the relationships are so important. If you're in the real estate world, for example, you have real estate investors that are your clients. You're not just doing a one-off deal with someone necessarily, but you're trying to form that relationship. And a lot of times these guys would utilize multiple brokers because they may think that they're going to get cut out of an opportunity if they just have one broker represent them on the buy side or represent them on the leasing, et cetera. Well, it was my job to get them to realize that I provide value, right? Not just value from showing the properties or asking them how their kids are, or how their dad is, or whatever. But I provide value to their portfolio. So, about the time the REO world was going away, I had these customer relationships that had grown organically. Maybe they were doing $2-3 million a year initially. Well, now they're doing $6 million a year with me, right? And as their portfolios grow, my business is growing. So it wasn't necessarily that I was going out, going out and doing a whole lot more prospecting so much as I was just maintaining the business that I had and the organic growth that I had, along with acquiring and accumulating assets on myself, on my own.
Mm, mm. No, that's awesome. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, it takes a lot of resilience sometimes when we're building relationships. People are busy. There was a lot of fear. I remember there was a lot of fear that people that are getting stuff done had to push through that.
Hmm.
You talked about, and maybe that was the toughest one. You talked about you had that incident where you ended up going to jail. Would you say that was the time period that maybe shaped having tremendous resilience to push through, or did you have other tough moments that helped shape this idea of it doesn't matter what comes my way, we're resilient, we're going to push through it. We already know you're a gambler,
Yeah.
right? So, but even then,
I,
fear is a real thing, right? So,
yeah, I would say that was the point, that really shaped the ego strength book. It shaped,
mm,
me coming out and working multiple jobs. It shaped who I am today, and really who I've become and who I'm going to be, and continuously want to improve to try to be. Because I was in a dark spot, and I was pointing the finger at a lot of different people, Frank. And it's easy to do, to play the victim card. It's easy to point the finger and say, I don't have this skill set, or I'm not capable of doing what he's done, or why am I here? I'm protecting my friends, but really, I was the one that chose to gamble. I was the one that made the mistakes, and it wasn't until I actually had that realization that, wait a minute, the onus is on me. I control my life, not anyone else. You know what I mean? That's what really shaped me, and that's what really it was a transformational moment for me. And then obviously, when you get the lunch punch that I had with my uncle. When we went to
right.
lunch, and he said, the position is no longer available. I mean, that was another transformational moment for me. Uh, that that created another level of, hey, so what? You could do this. You know what I mean? And just instilling confidence, mindset, belief in myself.
So there's a couple of things I want to hit on there. One, you talked about. blame, right? And now in today's tech-driven world, it's never been easier to be a keyboard warrior, right? And people are issuing blame like it's air,
Yeah.
but it never really moves the needle, right? And that, what is it? Because there's a lot of people that in their mind, deep, they're like, I want to do business, or maybe it's not business. Maybe they just want to do great at their job, or great at, be a great husband or wife or whatever. They want to be great at something, but they can't seem to let go of this idea of blaming. In fact, I saw a meme just the other day that says, hey, when something goes wrong, take responsibility and just assume it's your fault.
I love it.
And what are your thoughts on that? Because some people are like, yes, absolutely. And then one other person's like, well, no, I don't necessarily agree with that because what if it's traumatic? And, then they got into the whole trauma thing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a fair argument. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there here you may not be able to control the situation, but you could always control how you react to the situation. Okay, so in some way, because you're put in that situation, maybe someone else's fault, but you can control which direction you go from there, right? And I always feel like I love that. Just always assume that it's your fault. I mean, I think that it's easy to point the finger at other people, and a lot of times people don't achieve what they want to achieve because they believe that they can't. There's a Henry Ford
Mm,
quote, one of my favorites, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's one thing, right? The other thing is they don't achieve it because they want it, but it's more of a wish. You know what I mean? They don't
yeah.
want to put forth the effort. Like anything that you do, whether it be personally, professionally, with your wife, with your kids, with your friends, you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional. You have to make a promise to yourself and a foundational promise to them, really, that you're going to put forth the effort. So, the activity is what produces the results. You're not going to get anything great if you don't put forth the effort to accomplish that. And I think a lot of it just has to do with, well, I wanted that. Well, yeah, but I actually went out and I did what it took from point A to point B to get there, and a lot of people just wish for it and they don't necessarily want to lay out a plan and execute on the plan to get there.
This is true. And when I think about effort, anything worthwhile always seems to be a lot more effort than we think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I tell people all the time, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's green where you water it, right?
This is true. This is true. And but the flip side is, and I don't know if flip side is the right word, but another point of consideration is a lot of people become discouraged and say, I just don't have any more in me. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, a lot of that stems from the media and the instant gratification and the society that we live in today, and to your point, anything really great is worth putting forth constant effort. And it's a constant effort, the consistent effort that really creates a change. Anyone can do anything for a week or 2 weeks, and then when it falls off, you know what, I didn't get it, I'm done. Well, you didn't put forth the consistent effort.
So from a 10,000, because you've been in business for a long time now and you've created a lot of success, what about that person that's doing it for multiple years? And I'll use real estate as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, they've been in it 5 years, 10 years, and they look at where they're at and they're just like, I should be farther ahead. Like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? Right? And it becomes discouraging because now they really did put the effort. They really did work hard. They really did. They may have gotten coaching. They may have gotten training. They may have been around the opportunity. And for some reason, it still didn't work. What's your message to people like that? 'Cause there's a
Yeah,
few
I mean,
out
if
there.
they, my initial thought was going to be maybe they were running in the wrong direction. Maybe they were putting forth the
Fair.
effort, but they were running the wrong way. If they've done the coaching and they've done the accountability, and they've said, okay, for me to get, and they've done the planning and they've executed on that plan and they still are failing, I think they need to look in the mirror and they need to say, hey, why is this? Sometimes things just don't work. Listen, I've failed in business before, and I've said, when I got into business, what's my exit? Well, I missed the opportunity to exit. I missed the opportunity to grow and scale, and it just failed, and I lost money. At some point, not everything's going to be a winner, right? But if they've gotten the coaching for real estate, for example, I think the number one reason people fail is because they think it's easy, right? Success is
Yeah.
simple when you outline the strategy, but nothing's easy. So, if they've gotten the coaching, they've gotten the sales training, they've done the prospecting, you know, and they've talked to everyone in their COI, and you're in the real estate world, and you're still failing, I would say, hey, what is it that you really want to do? Are you lacking passion? Are you lacking an internal way to communicate? Are you lacking something internally like that's creating a disconnect with your clients as you're going through the prospecting and the negotiating, or maybe you're loose on your transactional work. You're not necessarily following through the way that you should. Something's missing. There's always something. You just have to find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me that just the other day I heard someone talk about the two words Napoleon Hill always talked about, burning desire.
Yeah.
And maybe the burning desire is not for the goal, but do you have a burning desire to solve the problem? And that's not always maybe the most exciting thing, right? So
Right.
you mentioned your uncle a couple of times.
Yeah.
Speaking of desire, and we generally have a desire to, do our family right and that sort of thing. What role has faith and family played in guiding you through these ups and downs as you've done these different businesses to date?
It's been huge. I mean, my uncle was my greatest mentor. I mean, he taught me everything that I know about commercial real estate, and really he gave me structure. He gave me stability. He pushed me harder than anyone, and really expected more of me, which is honestly why I didn't get the job back. He expected more, and I get that, and I'm not mad at him at all. I mean, it shaped me into who I am, and he was a huge factor as to who I am today. Matter of fact, I love him for it. Uh, but faith is it's just as important, if not more important, than the family. Obviously having the support of your family when you make a decision, whether it be who to work for, what job to take, what you do in business, what you do in your recreational time, etc. Having the support and confidence and belief and the backing from your family is huge, because that's who you spend most of your time with anyway, and really that's who you're doing it for, right? Is the
Hmm.
family and yourself, uh, and then faith. I mean, having the belief that there's more out there, and that I'm not. Listen, I know there is a God. I'm not him, right? So having the belief that I've got to have the humility, I've got to be able to focus on myself and give to something greater than me is is very important to me.
Mm. Yeah, I recently read, speaking of faith, I recently read the book of Job. And of course, that's a story of just, you got a guy that goes through insane pain to the point where his wife is like, curse God and die. And then his quote unquote friends come along, three cycles around about, and then a know it all shows up after all of that. And then it resolves, and the guy is blessed more than he was in the beginning, and he was doing quite good in the beginning. And you read a story like that, and you're just like, could I live through something like what he did? Like, if that happened to me, could I do that? Have you had a moment in business where you had potentially that such a level of doubt where you're like, can I really do this? Where it just seemed totally, I don't know, right? And how'd you get
uh,
through it?
I haven't had that level of doubt in business. I've had that level of doubt just in other aspects of life and various times in life. and I've always turned towards faith. You always turn towards faith when people always turn towards faith when things are bad or they're in doubt. But it's what they do. Do you turn towards faith when things are good, and do you give praise and thanks when things are good? And that's for me.
Mm.
That's what I think. I thank God every day for the talents, abilities. The my ability to recognize. That I'm in control of my actions, and then giving is obviously more gratifying than just receiving all the time. And some of the things that I live my life by, I mean, that's very important. And I just give thanks. I've never questioned myself in business. Honestly, I've made mistakes, but I've never questioned why I did something.
That's awesome. And not everyone I know can say that.
Yeah.
So that is awesome. I love it. Now the
I
power of
never have
faith.
seller's remorse when I sell something. I never, if something fails, I did it because I thought it was a good idea, right? I don't
Right,
question why I
exactly.
did it. I just move on. And I think,
So
one of the things, when I wrote the book, one of the things that inspired me to write the book was I did an entrepreneurial journey. I did a breakfast, just charting my entrepreneurial journey from hanging Christmas light business back in high school, all the way to where I was today. And honestly, I never reflect back on the bad things, just try to
mm,
move forward.
mm.
And I never reflected back on the positive things either. So charting all of those things made me realize, man, I've done a lot of good things in the last, 12 years, or 20 years, really. Uh, I said, I think I could inspire some change and really have a meaningful story to tell. And that's why I wrote the book. But yeah, I have self-reflection on a daily basis, but I never look back and question any of the good things or the bad things.
I mean, that sounds like a great exercise, really, to sit down and just start writing down all the things we have done.
Yeah,
And I think most of us would be maybe astonishingly shocked. Hey, we've actually done a few good things, and a few is probably a really long list for a lot of people.
yeah,
But yet one thing happens and it's like we forget.
you're exactly right. Because people tend to focus on the negative. As a matter of fact, your mind is conditioned to focus on the negative, and they do forget. We as people forget.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. That's a good word. What inspired you to get into philanthropy? Like a lot of people don't even talk about it, but I noticed you talked about it, and you were like, "Yeah, we've done over 3 million for things like cancer research, autism, and so forth."
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to keep that sort of thing a little more private, but again, you shared it more openly. So I'll ask, like, what inspired you
Yeah.
to get into? Obviously, you have a soul that loves helping people. We can sense that. But to actually go do that and raise the capital and contribute and meet with the causes, that's work too, right? So
That
how
is.
did that
It's a whole
come
nother
about?
business. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yep. So I got involved. My first taste on a nonprofit from me giving my time or money perspective, sizable, rather than just donating 100, $500, was with Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I went to an executive leadership committee breakfast. My dad was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2015. So I just wanted to learn a little bit more about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So I went to a breakfast that I was invited to, and they were talking about how if you raised $100,000, you could fund a research grant into someone's name. And at the time, my dad and I are extremely close. At the time, I was like, this is a great cause. I knew more about the organization than by going to the breakfast. And the lady came around and she said, what do you think you want your level of participation to be? And I said, well, I'm going to raise $100,000. And she just kind of laughed and was like, oh, okay. And she went and told the guy that was giving the breakfast, she said, Chuck thinks he's going to raise $100,000. And my buddy Dave at the time said, well, if Chuck said he's going to do it, he's going to do it. And she was like, oh, okay. Well, I only had 75 days or 60 days or something to raise it. And I raised 105 or $108,000 that year. And I funded the research grant in my dad's name as he was going through his chemotherapy and his treatments. And I was spending a lot of time in the hospitals at that time, KU Med. He went to Omaha, MD Anderson for second opinion, and he went into remission. And about 9 months after his remission, cancer came back more aggressively. Well, at
Mm,
this time, I committed to chair the Light the Night Walk, which is Leukemia Lymphoma Society's big event, and I set a goal of raising $1 million in Kansas City for the Light the Night Walk for the first time in Kansas City's history. So they typically raised about 800,000, and I said I'm gonna raise a couple 100,000 by throwing a gala in my dad's name. We'll do this gala, have 300 people in attendance, and my dad at the time, they recommended a allogenic bone marrow transplant, which is where you get a donor for the bone marrow. So he was down MD Anderson. This was in about 2017 now, and I was the donor. So I donated my bone marrow to my father, uh, and
Wow.
he's still alive, cancer free today. So he's 8 years
Mm.
post transplant, cancer free, still alive, and I got a chance to give back to him. But as I'm doing all of these things, we ended up raising $270,000 at this gala that we put on. We went over $1 million for the Light the Night Walk for the first time in Kansas City history, and Dad was the honored hero when he came back. The Light the Night Walk was in September. So we used it as like a big party for my dad. He was one of the honored heroes. I had my wife had just had our third kid, third child at the time, and they're all sitting out in the audience. One of the other honored heroes was like a 5-year-old, going through the treatment, same chemotherapy treatments that adults receive, even though their bodies the toxicity of the treatments are just not conducive to their bodies. They end up having, hip replacements, bone degeneration, et cetera, from these extensive chemotherapy regimens. And I said, man, I've got to do something more. Some people say, why me? I'm looking at my kids and I'm thinking, why not them? You know what I mean? Why are
Mm.
we so fortunate to not have these issues? I want to give back more. So we started Opus Charitable Foundation at that point. Our primary pillar is pediatric cancer research. We committed $1.75 million to the Dare to Dream initiative recently. We're bringing our gala back next year. We're going to try and raise $1 million at the gala. It's on
Mm.
August 15th of 26. We've already raised, like you said, about $3 million. Majority of that going to cancer research, MS Society. We do a lot of work here locally with Next Step KC, which is neurological and spinal cord injuries. Uh, Big Brothers Big Sisters here locally, and just various local
Mm.
charities. We do some work with just direct giving to some families that are in need.
Mm. Wow. Well, first of all, wow on how you helped your father. Like,
Yeah,
and he's still alive. Like, I can't even imagine. That is spectacular. Um, wow. I mean, I just the humility and the love there is like, wow. And just to be able to, and to know he's still alive and to cherish that day in and day out, what a gift.
yeah, it was awesome. Still is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I can't even imagine. I'm like, wow, talk about a gift. So just thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Wow, that's just wow. That's all I'm gonna say is wow,
thank
because
you,
that's enough.
thank you, thank you.
um, and then I got to thinking, I think I got the title for the show and I put it out, and I think I'm gonna call it Flip the Script. The theme I'm hearing as we're conversing here is the question should never be why me, it's why not me?
Yeah,
And how we have the power to flip the script on anything,
yeah,
all the way to the point where you just shared what you did about, like, if you can do that for your father who, participated in bringing you into the world, it's like, what can't we do if we
yeah.
just flip the script in our head?
I love that. Yeah,
Man, that's powerful. I have to like reset now. That's wonderful, wonderful, man. Um, Speaking of helping people out, one thing I learned that I thought was interesting was you coach youth baseball,
yeah,
which is fun. I used to coach youth soccer a little bit, and what a blast! What a blast! Because we get to display leadership as not just an adult or coach, but it's almost like you have a bunch of kids there for an hour or two, right? They're
yeah,
almost like your own kids.
yeah,
Leadership almost like at its most grassroots type level, right? What are some of the lessons you learned coaching youth baseball that translate into business?
Oh yeah, it's there's a lot. It's a lot of fun. I mean, obviously you have to coach each kid differently, right? And you have to treat all of your employees differently. Everybody has, where some leaders lack is they treat everyone how they hear that golden rule, treat everyone how you want to be treated. You can't do that, especially with the youth. You have to treat them how they want to be treated. You have to teach them their best
Mm,
coaching style to where they receive that message. You know what I mean? So that translates to business because I can't treat my accounting team the same way that I could treat my ops team. They all have different personalities, which is why they're in the positions that they're in, you know, and just
mm.
getting the right people in the right position and conveying the right message to where they're going to become the best version of themselves. Right. I can't expect, and that includes my three boys. I can't expect, you know, my son Johnny to be like Benny, right? He's got a different build, different coaching style for me to coach and lead him. He's not going to be as fast. That doesn't mean that he can't become the fastest version of Johnny that he could be, or hit for more power than Benny can, right? So I mean, just understanding each person's skill set and coaching them up towards that skill set so that they can be the best version of themselves.
So it really dives into really understanding the different personality types, right?
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, doing the disc profiling is big for us at a corporate level. Obviously, we don't do it with the kids. I didn't mention my son Chucky. His team, the little guys, is probably the most fun to coach. It's therapeutic. The 7 and 8 year olds,
Mhm.
just because they're so raw and they still don't understand. Like when you start getting 11 and 12, that's when you start teaching them about, failure is part of life. At the young age, they make an error. They just don't care. It doesn't matter if you win. They start getting older. You start to utilize baseball to teach them life skills, overcoming adversity. Failure is part of the game. It's also part of life. But
Yeah. Well, one thing that I was reminded of recently, my wife, she'll find these videos every now and then online, and she works with elementary kids, and so it'll be a little video of a little kid asking the darndest questions, right?
yeah,
But they do it with such, it's a genuineness of spirit. Like it's
yeah,
funny because it's like, oh, it's a little kid saying something, but at the same time, it's like, wait a minute, but there's a genuine curiosity there.
yeah,
And as we get older as adults, a lot of people will shy away from that because, wait, if I answer that, I got to be vulnerable.
hmm
I got to be transparent. How do you encourage your team to not let those things be barriers to get back to those raw conversations? Because we all know at the end of the day, instinctively, when we get to raw conversation, stuff gets done.
yeah. Well, that's when you really grow too. You know what I mean? Is when you ask those questions and really have an understanding as to what the possibilities are stemming from that question. So what the responses could be, or what the ramifications or results could be of instilling an action that has to do with that question. So I mean, I think you have to, but I think part of leading with humility is getting your team to then also ask vulnerable questions, try new things, and not fear the failure of it. Uh, it is funny though when people do it with such conviction. The little people, especially like my daughter, she asks some things, and it's with such conviction. It's just funny,
Yeah,
but
and they better come up with an answer quick.
exactly.
They are not letting up.
Uh,
For that, you were in real estate, you had created success, and to this day, I think you're still involved in real estate doing
yeah.
things. But then you expanded into these other industries. What was your, what is it that ultimately went through your mind that said, you know what, it's now okay to expand, that I can expand into other industries, but that this primary focus of commercial real estate's not going to suffer? Because you hear people talk about stale, stale, stale,
Yeah.
but maybe they stale too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have the right people in the right seats, the people that you could trust, the people that you could delegate to, the people who are going to look after your business as if it's yours. And you have to that's part of looking after your employees, though, is if they're the ones building the business because they are. So when you take care of your employees, they take care of your business. So once I got that in place to where I felt like, okay, the guy that's pretty much operating the day to day, Nate Prather, a good friend of mine, he's 10 years in, he's seasoned, he understands what I would do even without me being present. That's when you're really ready to take the next step. Once you could delegate and not feel like you have to micromanage it either, right? So a lot of times people think they want to go do something else, they can't ever let go. If you can't let go and trust the people that you put in place, how are you really going to scale and grow?
Mm. That is always the question, right? Do I? I mean, is that not the ultimate measure of trust? Can you let it go?
Yep. And if you don't give your employees and your leaders, the people that you put in the place, the autonomy and the latitude and agency to run the organization or to run the company with the direction and vision that you have in place, then you're gonna get stuck, and that's it. You're gonna constantly just be on that treadmill.
Yeah, for sure. Well, after all these years now, you're not done. You're still rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
What do you envision your legacy you're building ultimately to be from your journey?
yeah. So I mean, legacy is very important for me, especially after what I went through with my dad. As a matter of fact, in the book, I share, and this was a very vulnerable part for me. I share a note that I wrote my dad before the transplant. And about legacy and how I'm his legacy. So legacy is important for me when I look at my kids. That's what I ultimately see as my legacy. Because if I do all this and I build all this, and then my kids just reap the rewards and don't necessarily grow, better themselves, better people around them, and they don't instill in others what I've tried to instill in them and lead by example, then that's going to have a negative impact on me. Oak Ridge, the family social club that we developed, that was kind of a legacy project. We may not make a lot of money here, but it's about making memories. It's about creating community. It's about growing the legacy that we have to give back to people and have them make a lot of memories together as families, foundational skills, communication skills, relationship skills, where you come to a place, you're outside, you're not on devices. The leadership tools that I give to my team, my staff, all of our staff across all companies, even as far down as our bud tenders, we do training for them. We try to give them skills, grow them, the growth mindset, et cetera, to make them the best version of themselves. So for me, legacy isn't what I've it's not what I do right now on this time that I'm here on this planet for the brevity that I'm here, right? It's not what I do, it's what I leave behind. So it's what skills, talents, leadership qualities, and whatnot I leave behind to my kids, to my leaders, to everybody else that continue to grow and flourish while I'm gone.
Mm.
Obviously, I've given legacy a lot of thought.
I would say it gives us all a lot to think about, and something that maybe a lot of us don't think about till it's a little bit later than in the process than it maybe ought to be. So no, I appreciate you sharing that. That's powerful and a reminder that it is something we need to consider and consider often because we aren't here forever. So I love it. I love it. Well, Chuck, I want to thank you for coming on today. I suspect we could talk for a long time. However, we can't be on here forever. But no, I
Yep.
appreciate you coming on and sharing just some wonderful insights on not just business, but life and how it intersects with our business world as entrepreneurs and the things we need to consider and keep in mind. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Chris, there'll be links to his information below. If you want to talk with him about real estate or any of these other companies, we'll have links to all that in the description below. So feel free to reach out to him. But Chuck, I want to thank you again for coming on the show today. And wow, just some wonderful insights. Can you leave us with a final word?
Ah, do more, be more. That's it. I think that believe in yourself and believe in your abilities to do more and be more.
Short and sweet. I love it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Chuck, thank you again for coming on. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.